Good evening, everyone. We got people coming in. Wow. Oh, this is great. All right. Good evening. Good evening. If you can hear me, please type in A1. If you can hear me, please type in A1. Okay, great. Excellent. Let me just make sure my sound is coming through my microphone. Uh, sound. Uh-oh. Headset. Yes, great. Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. People are coming in the room. Very good, very good. All right, so we're just going to give people an opportunity to come into the room. My name is Jacob Mays, if you don't know me. I am the founder of SPSSVideoTutor.com, the founder of the DissertationChallenge.com, and the Dissertation channel on YouTube. Um, Many of you know me either through my membership in some of the Facebook groups or either, your school referred you to me, uh, or what have you. Now, I do a combination of both qualitative data analysis training and quantitative data analysis training, and I've been doing this since about 2008. Now, this is the qualitative data analysis workshop. The 15-day qualitative data analysis workshop. Okay. Now, let me just make sure. Um, what we're going to do is we're going to walk through the entire data analysis process. Okay. You're going to watch me as I analyze 10 transcripts from a study and then code those transcripts, level one coding, combine those level one codes to come up with themes, and then write a summary report. I'm not going to write a full chapter four results section, but a summary report of how you would generally report the results. Okay. If you are here for, I just want to make sure that people are here for the qualitative data analysis and not the quantitative data analysis. So if you're here for the qualitative data analysis workshop, type in a Y. If you're if you're not here for this, type in an N. So just type in a Y. Okay, great. Excellent. Okay. Um, just some housekeeping things. The way I teach my workshops is very interactive. Okay. I don't assume that you know anything. And also, uh, if you have questions, please feel free to raise your hand or say something to me. Okay. I don't get offended if people interrupt because my philosophy is if you get stuck, it's better to ask the question when you have the question so that I can fix it, so that you can get unstuck and then you can learn, right? You can build upon, your understanding of the process. If you get stuck and then you wait and then I continue teaching, then you're not going to grasp the material because you're going to be stuck on whatever uh you're being challenged with. Okay. All right. Excellent. Excellent. So it's very interactive. I'm always asking questions. Do you understand? I don't, again, I teach my courses and workshops as if someone just walked off the street and just said, "Hey, I want to learn data analysis." So please don't feel insulted if I if I'm very elementary or if I, assume that you don't know anything. That's just my teaching style. It's not meant to be offensive or anything like that. All right. Um, let's see. Does anyone have any questions at the moment before I start? Um, who can see your messages? Oh, no, that's just me. Um, okay, so I've got three screens here. So if you see me looking over here, that means I'm looking at the people who are coming in the room and I'm letting them in. And if you see a screen, me look over here, that means I'm looking at some other stuff and this is the main screen. All right. So it's about 8:06. All right. So what we're going to do today is we're going to cover some basic things about the study that we're going to analyze. Okay. We're going to look at the discussion guide and the research questions, and then we're going to begin coding the first transcript. Okay? All right. So the qualitative data analysis process is as follows. First, you have data collection via the respondent interviews. You transcribe the interviews, and then you clean up the transcripts. Then you import the transcripts into your qualitative data analysis software. Now, let me ask this. How many of you, uh, if you've done qualitative analysis or plan to do it, how many of you plan to hand code your data and with sticky notes and things like that, type in a one versus those who were going to use a specific software? If you planned on hand coding your data, type in a one. If you planned on using a software, type in a zero. Okay. Uh-oh. Let somebody in. All right. Now, so a lot of people do things by hand, but I'm going to show you how to use a free software to code your data. So importing your transcripts into the qualitative software, aligning your interview questions with your research questions, because that's very important. Actually, that should have been done in your chapter 3 methodology section, right? Because you generally want your discussion guide questions or your interview questions to be aligned with your research questions. Then we're going to code the transcripts with level 1 codes. And when I say level 1 codes, those are just codes that represent the gist of what the person is saying. Okay. We're going to do that for the 10. And then in the second phase, we're going to look at all the level 1 codes and see which ones are similar. We're going to combine those level 1 codes into level 2 codes and then say, okay, what does this level code represent? What is the theme that is conveyed from the combination of these 2 or 3 or 4 level 1 codes? If that makes sense, type in a 1. If it doesn't make sense, type in a 0. Okay, great, great, great. All right. So, and then once you have the level 2 codes, then you can sort of put together, okay, what do these themes convey and how do they match up with my research questions? Okay? All right. If you're with me so far, type in a Y. If you have if you're lost, type in an N. It's okay. No shame. Only I can see. Okay, great. Great. Awesome. All right. So let's start out with looking at the study. Okay. Let's start out with looking at the study. And I have what is called a dissertation strategy document, and it's like a summary of your research. Okay. So the name of the study was professional development. Let me just make it bigger so you can see. Okay. If you can see that clearly, type in a one. If you're having problems seeing it, type in a zero. Okay, great. So the study that we're going to analyze and it's on professional development and its effects on high school general education teachers in the inclusive setting. Okay. All right. So let me just give you some background of what this study is about. Originally, they had students, general ed students, and then they had students with disabilities separated. Okay. But the state decided to do was to move the students with disabilities into the general ed classroom. Okay. And they didn't provide that much training to the students, to the teachers of the general education teachers. Some of them took a training and some of them did. What were the perceptions of the general education teachers as it relates to having students with disabilities in their classroom, number one? And number two, for those who took professional development classes, what were the strengths and weaknesses? And for those who did not take professional development classes, what kind of training would they need in order to be better equipped to deal with students with disabilities who had now been thrust into their classroom? Okay. If that makes sense, type in a Y. If that does not make sense, type in an N. All right. So the research questions for this study were as follows. Do general education teachers believe that professional development related to students with disability in inclusion settings can improve teacher performance with students with disabilities in inclusion settings? So basically saying, hey, if you get professional development, do you think it's going to improve your ability to deal with these students in your classroom? Right? Simple enough. Second research question. How should professional development influence co-teaching in inclusion setting? Now, so what they did is in some cases, they took the special ed teacher who was with the students with disabilities, and they actually brought that teacher into the classroom with the general ed teacher. So as the students with disabilities moved around for their different subjects, the special ed teacher would move with them. Okay. So they're asking, okay, what was your perspective around dealing with the students, but also what are your perceptions around dealing with the additional teacher in your classroom? Should professional development also deal with that issue? Okay. All right. So if you feel you have a good gist of the study, type in a one. If you're still murky on the study, type a zero. Now, this is a phenomenological study. So what that means is that that's the kind of study where you're focusing on the experience of the respondents. Okay? You're focusing on the experience of the responders. Does someone have a question? Okay. If you have a question, just type in a Q and I'll see it on the board. All right. So we have that. So now that we have a basic understanding of the study, let's look at the discussion guide. All right. So the discussion guide consisted of some very basic demographic questions, and it included some questions around what do you feel? You know what? Let's look at it here. Okay. Okay, so here let's do it this way. All right. So here are the interview questions. Okay. And here are the research questions. Now, when you're conducting qualitative research, specifically in chapter 3, you should have a grid like this in your chapter 3, because what it enables you to do is it enables you to align the questions to the actual research questions to make sure that there's a good degree of symmetry. Now, all of the questions don't have to fall under one of these, right? Some of them are setup questions, right? So not all of your questions have to align under a research question, but a good number of them should. All right. So first question, um, what do you feel the role of special educator is regarding co-teaching in the general education classroom? Right. So say we look at that question. It says, do general education teachers believe that professional development, students with disability and inclusion settings can improve teacher performance with students with disabilities? How should PD influence co-teaching in inclusion settings? Okay. Now, this first question is probably going to be more aligned with research question 2 because it deals with co-teaching, and research question deals with co-teaching. So we would put an X under, matter of fact, let me get the pencil. Where's my pencil? Pencil. Oh, annotate. So we would put a pencil right here. Okay. If that makes sense, type in a Y. We're talking about co-teaching in the first question, and we're talking about co-teaching in research question 1. If that makes sense, type in a Y. All right. Next question. How is the special education teacher utilized in the general education classroom? Again, that's dealing with co-teaching, special education teacher. Okay. Next, how does having students with disabilities impact your classroom? Do general education teachers believe that professional development relates to students with inclusion can improve teacher performance? Uh, this may relate to this. It's a little ambiguous. Uh, I'm just going to put a circle here because it's not 100. It's definitely not research question 2, but it's more aligned with research question 1. Okay. How do you compensate for slower learners? This is probably going to be something that's more under research question 1. Do general education teachers believe that professional development related to students with disabilities? Yeah, so it doesn't deal specifically with the research question, but it may be a way to get through the back door, right? So in other words, what is your perception about slow learners? How do you deal with them? Okay, so I've got these slow learners. I deal with them this way. So in professional development, should there be something related, some kind of training or focus on how you deal with slower learners? Are you understand what I'm saying? So it doesn't directly deal with the question, but it's sort of a secondary type question that could get to the research question, right? Do you feel that students with disabilities can learn the general education curriculum in the general education setting? General education related to students with disabilities can improve teacher performance. So this is not really dealing with this. It's probably more related to this, but it doesn't deal with it directly. Do you think that students with disabilities should have their own classroom? Why? That's another one that doesn't specifically deal with this. What is your perception of general education teachers being told that they must have professional development? Okay, so that one's dealing with professional development and the teacher. Do you think that general educators should have professional development? Okay. Describe the training that you have had in the last 6 months in regard to special education. Okay, that would deal. How often do you have training on collaboration? That would deal with that. What do you think? Hello? Question? Uh, okay. What do you think is a good number of students with disabilities to have in your classroom? Why? Um, that probably deals with the train. Well, not so much the training, not so much. What are recommendations for for teaching students with disabilities? That could relate to this, or it could relate to that. This could relate to both because you could recommend something dealing with co-teaching, or you can recommend something dealing with professional development. How do you feel about students being, okay, that's not related to either. Should students with disabilities in general education classes be required to keep up with their non-disabled peers? Not so much. Let me go back and show this. Do you think students with disabilities should have their own classroom and why? Mm, this could be related to both. But you see what I'm trying to do here. If you understand the process of what I'm trying to do here, um, then type in a one. Because here's why this is important. Because on the back end, we're going to be looking at the questions that align with the research questions so that when we can look at the level one and level two themes, then we're going to look at, okay, which themes address which question and which themes address other questions. Okay. All right. So what happens when the question does not align? It's okay. It's okay. If you were doing this before you conducted your study, then what you would do is you would question whether or not you would ask yourself how valuable is the question, or could you replace it with another question? Okay, that's what you would do. But now, since the study is already completed, you got to go with what you got. But beforehand, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. Uh, how do I turn this off? Okay, there we go. Okay, great. Oh, here we go. So erase. All right. All right. All right. So now we're going to move on. Now, what we're going to do now is we're actually going to go to the software. All right. So we're going to open up the software. Let's see, where is my software? Here it is, QDA Minor Lite. Now you can do that by going to apps. Uh, where is my Provalis Research and then QDA Minor Lite. Okay, you can do it that way, or if you have it pinned somewhere, you could do it that way as well. All right, we're going to say use free edition because anything that I teach you related to qualitative, I'm going to try to use a free tool. Now, there's another tool that you can use as well, and the next time I teach this class, I'm going to use that tool. Okay, so then we're going to close this out, and then it says three options: create new project, open existing project, or reopen a recently opened project. So we're going to say create new project. And then we're given three more options. It says create a project from a list of document images, import data files from the web. The other tool is, one second, it's just on my screen. Hold on. Hold on. Let me finish this and then I'll show you what the other name of the other tool is. So we're going to click on this. It says create project from list. And then it's going to open up and then it's going to say, okay, find at least one transcript. Okay. So then I have all of my things on my desktop in this file called QDAW7. Okay. And then I'm going to do that. And I'm going to say transcripts. And then here are all my transcripts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import one first. I'm going to show you how to import one. And then I'm going to show you how to import multiple at one time. So I'm going to click on this and then click add. Okay. That's how you add one. Click create. I'm going to click import creator date. Okay. That's all I'm not going to do anything else. And then I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to name this and I'm going to call this workshop Feb 2024. Okay. All right. And now it's going to import it. And this is what we have. Okay. We have the name. We got the researcher on as the speaker. And then we've got respondent one. Now, in the videos, in the pre-workshop videos, before you take this class, I created about 4 or 5 pre-workshop videos. And I show you how to clean up your transcripts before you bring them into the software. Because before we brought this in here, it had the researcher's name and it had either the name of the respondent or some other name for the respondent. The labels you want to have, if you only have 2 people in your transcript, you want to have the researcher and respondent one. You never want to have the name of the people in the study because then you have problems with anonymity. Okay. You always want to try to maintain anonymity. If that makes sense, type in a Y. The name of the other tool is called Qualcoder. Qualcoder. I'll use that next time because I have to develop a worksheet because everyone, so let me just show you this. I would have used the reason why so whenever I use, let me just make this smaller because this is just so big. So whenever I do qualitative research or any research, I always have for people as an option what I call a qualitative data analysis blueprint for that particular software. Okay. Now, for QDA Minor Lite, which is the software that we're using, I have these step-by-step processes, right? So we've got the purpose, the overview, the checklist. So I detail every step in the process. So let me just show you, right? So if you have this, make sure you're following along because when you're analyzing your data, you can use this checklist or blueprint to make sure you're doing everything right. Okay. Now, I show you how to install it. I show you everything that you need to know. Okay, how to clean up the transcripts and so on and so forth. Now, all right. So, if you saw the videos, the pre-workshop videos, type in a 1. If you didn't get a chance to see the pre-workshop videos, type in a 0. Those were free. When you signed up, you got a username and password to the site. And I would suggest that you, okay, 0. Okay. So some 1s, some 0s. So check the initial email. Maybe after this, I'll send out another email. But yeah, I'll send out another one after this. But they're free pre-workshop videos that give you the setup. How do you download the software? How do you clean your transcripts and all that kind of stuff, right? So all the steps that need to be taken before you actually get to the coding step. All right. If you don't have it, I want you to email me here. Okay. If you don't see the, please resend. Thank you. This is awesome. Okay, great. Yeah, absolutely. Um, Now this is not in the training, right? So remember, the training is free, but the materials you have to pay for, right? As well as the replay. Okay. Um, so this was the step-by-step blueprint that I provided people so that it would walk them through the steps. And I'll give you information about how you can get all this after at the end of the class. If you want to upgrade and get the replays and all that stuff, I'll send you a link. Okay. Now, so we have this. All right. So one of the first things that we want to do in the discussion guide, there were demographic questions. Okay. So if we look in the discussion guide transcript, uh, transcript. There were there were some demographic questions, right? Gender, age, ethnicity, and all of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out and we're just going to start reading. So we look through this. So let me show you something real quick. If you have the discussion guide, okay, you know what question to look for first, right? The first question he asked was about gender. The second one was about um age, right? So you don't have to read every word of the document, right? So you see here that you see male here, right? Respondent one says male. So and then you go above, it says ask some civil questions. The first particular, what gender do you identify with? So you highlight that, right? We don't have to read all this introductory stuff. We can get right to the point because we have the discussion guide. So we know what the questions are. So we can get right to the point. We click on this right here. Let me just see if I can make it bigger. Uh, can you see my screen clearly? Maybe I need to make it bigger. Hold up. Screen size, display. Okay, we're gonna make this 125. Okay, I think that's better, right? All right, I think that's better. So we highlight this, and then we click on this green marker right here. Okay? We click on this green marker. All right? So we have two things, the code name and what category is the code under. All right. The code name and what category is the code under. Now, we're going to be asking demographic questions. So the code name is the overarching. So what we're gonna do is the category is demographic. Okay. The code is gender. Okay. So basically, excuse me, basically, this specific word is related to gender under the category of demographics. Okay. So the code is what represents the word or the what you're trying, what is being communicated. You don't want to write male or female as the code. You want to write the level one code that represents what the words mean, right? Male is a gender, female is a gender, right? So that means that gender is the code and the category is demographics. If that makes sense, type in a Y. If that does not make sense, type in a zero, an N. I'm sorry, Y and N. Okay, great. All right. So now we know that the next question is related to age. Okay. So then we're going to come down and we see that age is there. So then we're going to go back here. We're going to type in age group. That's the code name, but it's still under demographics. So we click OK. So now we've got a second code under demographics. Okay. All right. Next is ethnicity. So we're going to highlight that, click on the green marker with the plus, and then we're going to type in ethnicity. Make sure it's spelled out right. Ethnicity. Okay. And what this does is the software is storing all of this information across all 10 transcripts. So at the end of your level one analysis, you're going to be able to spit out a report or produce a report that summarizes all of the themes and all of the codes by category. Okay. That's why this is much more efficient than doing things by hand and putting them down. Right. And I also want you to understand something. As we're going through this, people say, oh, you'll be so engrossed in the data if you do it by hand. Well, you're still doing it by hand. It's just that you're not writing it down on a piece of paper. You're letting the computer store it. You're still highlighting. You're still reading, right? If that makes sense, type in a 1. If it doesn't make sense, type in a 0. You're still doing the same process you would do if you were hand coding. So when people say, oh, you won't get as much, why? You're still reading and coding. It's just that you're allowing the computer to organize the information in an efficient way instead of you writing things down on a sticky note and putting it on the wall. Okay. So next, let's see, what is this? What grade level? So we're going to highlight this, go over here, and we're going to type grade level. Still under demographics. Okay, all right. Please sign, print your name there. And these are the questions. Okay. All right. So now we're getting to the questions. Okay, so there's some other questions that are under demographics. So he's got grade level, and then how did you earn your general education certification? And have you earned a degree in special education? Yes or no? And select total number of years teaching experience and total number of years teaching with students with, okay. All right. So there's some additional questions here that he's going to answer. Okay. Okay. These are the questions. Researcher. These are the questions. Very good. I will sign here. Okay. 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 Just in case you say something, what do you feel the role of a special educator is in regard to co-teaching? Okay. So he didn't ask the remainder of these questions. He went straight to these questions, right? What do you think the role is of a special education in regard to co-teaching? So now we're going to do a new theme, right? A new category, which is dealing specifically with question 1A. Okay. Question 1A is going to be the new category, and whatever the theme is going to be under question 1A. All right. Let's see. What do you feel the role of special educator is? So here's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to check highlight. I'm going to highlight this so that when I go back, it'll be easier for me to find the question. All right. So I'm going to highlight the question just for my own efficiency. What do you feel the role would be in your classroom? He says, obviously, not being I don't get a lot of co-teaching stuff, but I mean, I've kind of been there as a facilitator, as the ability to help the instruction. Like last year, I did have one class where I got, quite honestly, it was kind of used as a dumping ground. I was a third level AG class, and they threw, your ratio is supposed to be like what, 20% or less? It was about 70%. Really? Yeah, but that's all administration changeover and all that stuff. We got all that handled now, but I really struggled a lot with that because I got one-sided. Um, but I didn't get the actual special ed teacher, so it's what do you do? Seriously. Okay, so let me say something. When you're interviewing someone, you want to try to be as unbiased as possible. Okay? You don't want to give your opinion. You don't want to interject. You don't want to lead a person one way or the other. You just want to nod, acknowledge that you heard the person, and let the person speak. This is supposed to be a non-judgmental thing. You don't want people to think that you're agreeing with them, and you don't want them to think that you're disagreeing with them. Okay? If that makes sense, type in a Y. All right, where's my mouse? Oh, here it is. Yeah, I mean, I think they need to be a facilitator. So how do you feel special educator? As far as helping out. Okay. So here's what he says. So remember, how do you feel the role of a special educator is in co-teaching? And he says right here, I think they need to be a facilitator as far as helping out in things. So we're going to highlight that. We're going to click this, and then we're going to change this, right? We're going to change this to the question is 1A. So we're going to say Q1A, role of special educator regarding what should the role of special ed teacher be? Okay. And then this one says need to be a facilitator. So we're going to type that in, need to be a facilitator. Okay. So for the next category, which is question 1A, what should the role of special ed teacher be inside the classroom, right? This person says need to be a facilitator. So we put that down as one of the codes. If that makes sense, type in a 1. And you're going to do that exact same thing for all of the questions. And we may put down more than one code. And you see why I highlighted? Because we're going through this and you want to make sure that you're answering the right question. So I highlighted it and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's the question. All right. Because I had 3 or 4 regular kids in the course, it's only maybe 12 kids that I thought were held back because I then had over and over and over crosstalk, simple things. Whereas I think if I would have had a co-teacher, that could have been something. She could have taken them off to the side. Okay. Let's see. She could have taken them off to the side. She could have taken them off to the side and it back on while I moved on. She could have taken them off to the side and hit back on while I moved on. So this is basically um need to be a facilitator. So I'm actually going to highlight this, whereas I think if I would have had a co-teacher, I'm going to double click this to say it's an extension of that particular idea. So this is a continuation of that first thought. So what I'm going to do is, since it's already here, I'm going to double click it. So now the software has added that to that code. So now we've got this in the code as need facilitator, need to be a facilitator, and that under need to be a facilitator. So it's combining those two statements under one code. If that makes sense, type in a Y. If it doesn't make sense, type in an N. Because sometimes what you'll notice is that they'll answer the question and then they will elaborate on the questions. So if they answer the question and they later elaborate on the question, you want those 2 points to be considered under that one code. Because it's one thing to say, yeah, I think they should do XYZ, and here's an example of XYZ. Because you're going to need that when you're writing your results, when you have to elaborate on what the code means. Okay? You always want to, it's not just enough to say they need to be a facilitator. Yes, they need to be a facilitator, and this is what facilitation looks like, right? If that makes sense, type in a 1. If it doesn't make sense, type in a 0. Okay, great. All right, so now we're going on. So we're still on question 1. I'm not allowed to comment. Yeah, got you. That's a very good point. Okay, you see what the researcher did here? That's a very good point, and I'm glad you brought that. He shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't be making those kind of statements because that's some of the stuff that I'm looking for. That's kind of some of the stuff we need to get better at. Okay, fine. But don't share it with him. You're not you don't want to bias this guy. Keep that to yourself. You could say in yourself, "Oh, that's great. I'm glad he said it." But don't tell him that. Okay? If that makes sense, type in a Y. If it doesn't make sense, type in an N. You're not trying to bias these people. Yeah, I mean, most of the class I've had, like my first year, this will be my third year. My first year here, I had about 20, 22 kids in AG. And you have 10 to 15% special ed sprinkled in, and that's fine. That's enough ratio to where you can still give attention and follow your IEPs, but still get subject covered. All right. Wow. Okay. How is special education teacher utilized in a general education classroom? All right. That is research question 2, 1B. Okay? That's 1B. So now we come under a new category. All right. So I'm going to highlight this. How, let's see, where am I? And actually, you don't have to, yeah, well, that's a big one. How, okay. So I'm going to highlight this. This is question 2. So I'm going to highlight that. So it's easier for me to find. How is your special education teacher utilized in the general education classroom? You kind of explained it, and you're actually not, you didn't even have the opportunity to do that. Yeah. Well, the big problem here is we have 2. That's right. You have 2. I mean, how to make 2 special ed teachers fit in anywhere. Um, that's spread pretty thin, and that's always been a problem here, you know? They did it, they did a better job at it. And yeah, I think we have good special ed teachers, um, but they are overloaded and their ability to be in the classroom is limited. So this asks, how are they used in the classroom? Okay, good response. Good response. You're not supposed to say that because technically he didn't even answer the question. Specifically, how does having students with disabilities impact your classroom? So now he went on to the next question, right? So let's go back, and this is often can be a challenge. Um, he may have answered the question up here before he actually got the question, and that's okay. So what we're going to do is, let's see, how is your special education to utilize in the general education? It's a very good point. I'm glad. Let's see. I think they need to be a facilitator, instrument discouraged, but I really struggled a lot because I got one aid, but I didn't get the actual special ed teacher. So it's what do you do? Okay, so this was the answer. Um, but that's a special administration. But I really struggled a lot with that because I got one aid, but I didn't get the special ed teacher, right? So he didn't really get the special ed teacher. So that's the response, okay, to this second question, okay? So we're going to use this 1B, and we're going to click on this, and we're going to say Q1B, Q1B, and Q1B is how is the special education utilized? How is the special ed teacher utilized in the how is a special ed teacher utilized in the general ed classroom? In the gen ed classroom. Okay. And then our code for that is for this respondent, no special ed teacher present. Okay. So that was the response. So sometimes the response to a question actually comes before the question, but that's okay, right? That's okay because now we've got it coded and it's in the right space. And now we can go on to the second question, which is how do having students with disabilities impact the classroom? All right. That's why we highlight these questions. All right. If you're with me so far, type in a 1. If you have a question, um, type in a Q. If you're with me so far, type in a 1. Okay, great. All right. So next question, specifically, how does having students with disabilities impact your classroom? So yeah, I think probably it's a good balance because sometimes as educators, we feel we know what we're doing and we feel we explain something in a good way. And even regular ed kids aren't going to jump up and say, "Oh, I don't understand that." They don't want to look like they don't want to be embarrassed or whatever. I think when you have kids with an IEP or a kid that obviously doesn't get what you said, it makes you think about things in a way, well, how can I simplify it? Or how can I make that better? So sometimes it does make me be more thorough. Okay, so I like this one right here. Specifically, how does having students with disabilities impact? Okay, so here, sometimes it makes me, so sometimes it has me be more thorough instead of just cruising a topic. Boom, that's it right there. Um, so I'm going to highlight this, copy it, and I'm going to highlight this, and then I'm going to go here, and this is going to be question 2A, and then I'm going to just paste. Oops, wrong place. Wrong place. So question 2A goes there. Just make sure. And then question 2A. And then this one says, uh, sometimes it does make me um let's see, makes me more thorough in delivery. So you got to think about what the person is really saying so that you can capture it in the theme or in the level one code. Sometimes it does sometimes makes me more thorough instead of cruising through. I'll say that. Makes me more thorough at the OU versus in, versus cruising through. Yeah, okay, let's do it. And then we click OK. All right. So if you understood what I did there, type in a Y. Okay. If you understood what I did there, type in a Y. If you don't understand what I did there, type in an N. So what I did is I said, okay, what was the gist of what he was saying? And then you develop the code based on the gist of what he's saying. You don't use the whole thing. You only want to use, maybe about 4 or 5 words, if that. Okay. You want to keep it succinct. Does anyone have any questions? If you have questions, if you're confused, or if you just have questions in general, please ask. Okay. Please ask because I don't want anybody to get stuck. All right. Um, there is no need to choose different colors for various categories, code names. No, there's no need to do that. Um, because everything is going to be coded, and maybe I'll show you this when we come on tomorrow once we have some codes, because it's going to group them in a Word document, right? The only reason why you do them in color is so that you can keep track in your mind which ones go where. But you see it over here already, right? That list under Q1A is going to get longer and longer, and the list under Q1B is going to get longer and longer. Q2A is going to get longer and longer. And then when we spit out the report, you're going to have all the codes under Q1A, all the codes under Q1B, all the codes under Q2A, and so on and so forth. Because if we were doing it manually, we would have a color for so we would have a color for need to be a facilitator, and then if we had another code, we'd have a different color for that code under Q1A. Then we have a different color for Q1B and all different color. But we don't need to do that because it's going to spit things out in an organized manner. Okay. And you'll see it as we go through it and through it. Does that make sense? As we go on, you'll see. You'll see. Okay. You're very welcome. All right. Let's see. Um, let's see. All right. So, okay, we got it there. Okay, so then the next one says, how do you compensate for slow learning? So we're going to highlight that because that's a question. And I love to highlight my questions because I know where they are. Because when you're going back through this, let's say you have, you remember something, you want to go back to it. all of your stuff is already highlighted in yellow and you can quickly find the questions and you don't have to do this. Okay, it's just a veteran trick. Because you mentioned earlier because the ratio was so high, so you had so many in the class, it was hard to keep up for the other kids to keep up, for you to give them the attention they need. Okay. All right. So here's how that should have been handled. If a person has made reference to a question previously, or they've answered a question, instead of you saying exactly what they said and putting words in your mouth, you could say something like, you mentioned before about the ratios in your classroom. Can you articulate that again? And then have them go into it again. Okay. If you want to do that, he's telling me, oh, you said it was high. You said there was too many in the class. You want them to speak in their own words, right? That's what qualitative is powerful about, getting people to speak in their own words. All right. So now all he's saying is right. I mean, right is you can't code right, right? So now you said everything and he's just affirming. Well, right isn't, you can't code right, right? That's why you have to get people to say what you want them to say. All right. Because you had, again, here he goes again, because you had to keep, okay, now he says, can you elaborate on that a little more? He should have said that up in the beginning. Um, you try to prioritize. Let's see, how do you compensate? You try to prioritize. I mean, it doesn't matter if you got a class of AP kids. I don't think you're ever going to get through everything you want to get through. And especially back here, um, it's finding things. I mean, I've taken the special ed kid to the shop. I've taken them to the MEAPS lab. They've got to experience all of that they might not get to experience down the hallway or whatnot. We may not get through everything every year, but I think the quality is still there. Okay, and you think later on here we're going to talk about, okay, do you feel the students with disabilities can learn? Okay, how do you compensate for the slower learning? You try to prioritize. I mean, it doesn't matter if you got a class of AP kids. I don't think you're ever going to get through everything you want to get through. Okay, so he's basically saying you have to prioritize. And I think, especially back here, it's like finding they've got to experience all, especially I've taken these special ed kids to the shop and taking them. We may not get through everything. Okay, so two statements clarify this point. So what I'm going to say here for how do you compensate, I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So we got another, so how do you prioritize? It says, so basically is you try to prioritize. That's going to be the code, okay? So that's 2B, Q2B, okay? And then the code is going to be level 1 code is you have to prioritize. All right? Now, he also clarifies what prioritize means. We may not get through everything every year, but I think the quality is still there. Let me see. It says that they may not get to experience. We may not get through everything every year, but I think the quality is still there. So I'm going to add that to you have to prioritize. So again, sometimes you can't capture the full thought with just one sentence, right? But what some people will do, they'll just take this and do like this and highlight the whole thing. That on the back end is going to be a disaster. Okay. You want as much specificity as you can instead of having this whole paragraph saying you have to prioritize. And then you got to go back on the back end and say, okay, well, what did he really mean? It's better to do your due diligence and be specific up front as you can by only capturing the sentences that reflect what the person is trying to say. Sometimes it's one sentence, sometimes it's two sentences. If that makes sense, type in a Y. If it doesn't make sense, type in an N. All right. Okay, great. Let's see. Okay, and thank you. Later on here, we're gonna, okay, do you feel, so the next question, do you feel students with disabilities can learn in the general education setting? All right, so I'm gonna highlight that because that's a question, and that is question 3A. Without a doubt, that's his response, right? Beautiful. Real simple. Um, so I'm gonna include that without a doubt. Question 3A. Um, learn in the gen ed classroom. And I'm gonna put exactly without a doubt. Because that's perfect. I could say yes. I guess I could say yes. Um, I like without a doubt though. Okay, so we're gonna do that. Now we're gonna see if we can elaborate on. That's one I'd be glad to elaborate on. Boom, there you go. I was a freshman in high school, and cause I had a Bob, I don't know if you remember him, probably the best educator I've ever had in my entire life. We had a young man with, I don't know what his disability was. I'm not up on all that. And he says, yeah, I'm not up on all that. But he was clearly disabled and clearly been passed over by other teachers or whatnot. But he was treated, I would say, basically like a normal kid. I mean, you had Mr. Nas agreed to him. He'd do that. He'd help him out, but he treated that kid like the rest of us. And after all the kids have to learn, and after all the kids have to learn in AG1, he still make the kid learn that. And actually, at the FFA banquet at the end of the year, the boy recited the word for word in front of a couple of hundred people. Wow. And that happened because he wasn't babied. I like hearing that. Okay, so let's see. Okay. Yeah, so he's talking about the boy. Um, this is I would say basically like a normal kid. I mean, let's see, Mr. Noss agreed to him, but he treated that kid clear but he was clearly disabled and clearly had been passed over by other teachers or whatnot. Okay. But he was treated, I would say, basically like a normal kid. Um, and let's see. I'm going to put that under there. And then I'm going to say all the kids have, he still, and actually at the FFF banquet, he ended the year, he bought, okay. So I'm going to put that under there too. So basically what I did is I combined three statements to put together what the person was saying. Instead of highlighting all this, I just highlighted the points, the sentences that relate to the main point. Yes, he believes it. And then the clarification of what he was originally saying. If that makes sense, type in a 1. If it doesn't make sense, type in a 0. All right. All right. So, okay, great. We're going to stop now because I don't like to go too far over past 9 o'clock, but we will continue coding this transcript tomorrow. So we will finish transcript 1 and then we will start transcript 2. Does anyone have any questions? Let me send you the link. So here's the link if you want to get this the blueprint. Right? If you want to get this and you want to get the replays, here's the link that will allow you to upgrade from the free. Okay? We're going to meet same time, same link tomorrow, 8 o'clock. There's the link if you want to upgrade and get this sheet or get the replays. Okay? Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so let me ask this question. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 was crystal clear, everything was super clear, and 1 is I'm totally lost, how would you rate your clarity so far on a scale of 1 to 10? Okay. 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 All right. Okay, good. 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 So, okay, great. So what I'm going to do, because some people came in late today. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to send everyone the replay of day 1, because I'm seeing that some of these numbers may be low because you came in late. So I'm going to send everyone the replay of day 1 so that you can get caught up. Okay. So make sure you try to attend on time, or either you're going to have to get the replays. Okay. Um, so I'm going to send everyone after it's loaded up. I'm going to send everyone the replay so that you can catch up. And then you will receive a reminder email tomorrow about, I think, 2 p.m. Again, the same link you use tonight is the same link you're going to use for every day of this 15-day workshop. Okay? All right. Does anyone have any questions? There's the upgrade link again. All right. Thank you so much for your attention. Oh, yes. Dr. Nayash has his hand up. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Nayash.
Hello, Jacob. Thank you so much. So my question is, are you like, when we conduct, qualitative data analysis, we either do, content comparison or thematic analysis?
Well, it depends, right?
Yeah, it depends. But like my question is, which one you are doing? And if you see, it's a very good tool, but Jacob, you are aware, if you give the data to AI, within like minutes, they will analyze the data and they will present it to you very
Right.
efficiently.
Right. So here's the thing with AI, what you would have to do with AI is you would say, hey, here are all of these transcripts. Here are my research questions.
Yeah.
Based on these transcripts, what are people's responses, or what are people saying to address these transcripts? And then it would give you a report. But I haven't seen AI tackle thematic analysis on this level that well. Now, if you give a lot, because what the difference here is that you're looking at 10 different interviews, right?
Yeah.
So then you have to sort of figure out how you're going to aggregate all of those 10 different interviews so that AI can differentiate between all of those 10 different interviews so that it sees them as different people and not just the same thing repeated over and over and over again. Right?
No, yeah, you're right. Yeah, they could, like they could create similarity and differences. That's the first.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm actually going to be experimenting with that because I cannot tell you how heavily I am getting into AI. I
yeah,
mean, you have no idea. I mean, before I came here today, I was all up in AI. I'm trying to figure out this thing because AI is now.
yeah,
Um, and I mean, it's just so powerful. But people on an academic level, they haven't figured out how. I mean, it can analyze data, um, but you have to give it the data. You have to tell it what the variables mean and all of that kind of stuff. So for me, it's still more efficient quantitatively for me to go through and analyze my own data.
yeah,
Um, but here we're doing thematic analysis because we're trying to understand the variations in different perspectives across human beings.
yeah. Thank you so much,
You're
Jacob.
very
Yeah,
welcome. You're very
yeah.
welcome. Okay. So, are there any other questions? If not, we will see you tomorrow at 8 o'clock. If you have any questions, if you want to upgrade, there's the link. I'm going to send out the replay in about it's 9:19. It'll come out in about 3 hours. So you can either watch it tonight or watch it tomorrow. Okay? All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your attention. This has been great. Have a good evening. Thank you. You're very welcome. Okay, how do I turn off the video?